Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be doing something a little different. We're going to be taking a deep dive into the world of shamanism and spirituality. And we're going to be doing it through the unique perspective of Shaman Durek.
Now, if that name rings a bell, it might be because you've heard of his book, Spirit Hacking. Or maybe you recognize him as a spiritual advisor to some pretty big names like Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yeah, he's kind of a big deal in the world of spirituality. But what really fascinated me about Shaman Durek was this interview he did on the Light Watkins podcast. It was just so full of insights and stories, and I felt like we just had to share it with you guys.
Absolutely. He's got this incredible way of breaking down these complex spiritual concepts into something that's really relatable and easy to understand.
Yeah, and he's not afraid to get personal either.
Yeah.
He talks about his own experiences with the spirit world from a very young age.
I mean, just imagine seeing spirits as a child. Beings in African clothes and pelts, even figures that resembled Vikings appearing right there in your room.
It's like he was born with this connection to another realm.
Right.
And his family recognized it too. They knew he had a special gift.
Shamanism was in his blood. It was a tradition passed down through generations in his family. This idea of bridging the gap between the physical world and the spiritual realm.
But it wasn't always easy for him. His family's spiritual practices kind of clashed with the strict Catholicism that his stepmother brought into the family.
So you can imagine the kind of internal conflict he must felt, embracing these incredible gifts while also feeling pressure to keep them hidden.
It's like being caught between two worlds. And on top of that, he also experienced intense abuse as a child, something that he believes was actually intertwined with his development spiritual abilities.
It's a really powerful connection that he makes this idea that our greatest challenges can actually become catalysts for deeper understanding and transformation.
And that's where those muddy walks come in, right? He talks about these rituals he felt compelled to perform as a child, burying dead birds with spirits.
Even at that young age, he was already drawn to connect with the spirit world despite all the fear and opposition he faced.
It really speaks to the strength of his calling. This wasn't something he chose. It was something he was born into.
Yeah.
And now, to understand shamanism a little bit better, it's helpful to know that Shaman Durek actually categorizes shamans into 5 different types.
You've got your earth shamans, your fire shamans, water shamans, air shamans, and then spirit shamans. And each type connects with the energy of their corresponding element to work with the spirit world.
So think plant medicine for the earth shamans, fire rituals for the fire shamans, sound frequencies for the air shamans, each with their own unique approach.
Right. And Shaman Durek himself identifies as a spirit shaman, which means he's particularly adept at navigating the intricate connection between the spirit world and our physical world.
And he even talks about the underworld, not as this place of punishment like some people might believe, but as a reflection of our own individual fears and experiences.
That's such a fascinating reframe, isn't it? It suggests that those demons we often try to fight against, they're not necessarily external entities, but rather manifestations of our own internal struggles.
The shadows we try to hide from. Exactly. Now, speaking of face and shadows, Shaman Durek's near-death experience was a major turning point in his life.
He was actually in Greece for a hypnotherapy course when he had this intense out-of-body experience that somehow transported him to Delphi, the ancient sanctuary of Apollo.
And get this, under hypnosis, he starts describing himself as the Oracle of Delphi in a past life.
Talk about mind-blowing. He was recounting specific details about locations, even his own death. It's like the veil between lifetimes just completely thinned out, allowing him to access these memories from another time.
It really makes you question the nature of time and reality, doesn't it? And this experience definitely forced him to confront his own mortality.
But it didn't stop there.
Oh, no.
While he was in the Amazon rainforest, a medicine woman actually gave him a chilling premonition. She warned him about a horrible death that awaited him.
Almost like the universe was sending him these repeated warnings.
Right.
And then guess what? Back in Los Angeles, his premonition starts to become a reality.
A spirit appears before him and tells him that they're going to rip him apart, and then his body starts shutting down.
He describes this excruciating pain like his organs are literally being torn from him. It sounds absolutely terrifying.
And you know what? This physical breakdown could actually be a reflection of what many spiritual traditions refer to as ego death. This process of letting go of our sense of self, the identity we so tightly cling to.
Which can be both terrifying and liberating, right? And as he's on the brink of death, Durek sees his entire life flash before his eyes.
Right.
Every action, every thought, and their ripple effect on the world.
And he starts to notice how negativity, things like arguments and anger, actually created these chaotic ripples that impacted events on a global scale, even contributing to natural disasters.
So it's not about suppressing our emotions, but it does highlight just how interconnected everything is and the power that our thoughts and actions have.
Absolutely. Then something incredible happens. He encounters this woman of light who guides him through this whole process and gives him a choice: stay in this blissful realm or return to Earth.
And even knowing that returning meant facing more pain and suffering, Durek chose to come back.
This idea of choice, even in the face of death, is just so empowering. It suggests that we have a level of agency, a say in our journey, even when we're confronted with the unknown. He even asked for his memories of the experience to be erased, but the woman of light warned him that he would always be teeter-tottering between this world and the next.
Like he was given a glimpse behind the curtain, a profound understanding of life and death. But coming back wasn't easy. He woke up with brain damage, unable to walk or even use his hands.
He spent 2 months in a coma, then 2 years in a wheelchair relying on dialysis. Talk about a test of strength and resilience.
He really embodies that wounded healer archetype, doesn't he? Someone who transforms their own pain into a source of healing for others.
And what's even more remarkable is that he received a kidney transplant from his sister, which gave him a decade of reprieve. But when his kidneys failed again and he had to go back on dialysis, he never lost sight of his purpose.
He chose to focus on serving humanity, using his experiences to guide and empower others.
It's like he's saying, life will throw you curveballs, but you have the power to choose how you respond. You can wallow in self-pity, or you can use your experiences to fuel growth and help others. And this brings us to his perspective on personal power, which is something I find particularly fascinating.
Right. He firmly believes that negativity stems more from our internal battles than from external forces.
It's a powerful shift in perspective, isn't it?
Oh.
Instead of blaming others or our circumstances, we take responsibility for our own thoughts and feelings. We recognize that we have the power to shape our own reality.
Okay, so how does he suggest we handle all that negativity that life inevitably throws our way? What's his secret weapon?
Love, pure and simple, unwavering, non-judgmental acceptance, even when we're faced with criticism or hate.
Wait, hold on. Even when people are being downright awful.
Especially then. He sees it as an opportunity to break the cycle of negativity, to respond with love instead of adding fuel to the fire.
So he's basically saying, I'm not playing the blame game. I'm choosing a different path. A path of love and understanding. It's like a Jedi mind trick for dealing with negativity.
You know, he even talks about his experience with the royal family and how he refused to engage in negativity even when he was offered platforms to do so. He just wouldn't bite.
That's a powerful demonstration of self-awareness and emotional maturity. He's not letting negativity define him or dictate his actions.
Exactly. He's choosing to rise above it. And that leads us to a question that I'm sure many of our listeners are asking. How do we cultivate that kind of resilience? How do we tap into our own spiritual strength and maybe even develop those psychic abilities that Durek talks about?
Right. Can we all learn to see auras or communicate with spirits? Where do we even begin?
Well, Durek's advice is refreshingly simple. Embrace your inner child. Reconnect with the magic of the world around you.
So it's about rediscovering that joy of exploration and approaching spirituality with a sense of curiosity and playfulness.
Exactly. Now, we're going to have to pause this part of our deep dive right here, but don't worry, there's much more to come. And, you know, one thing that's really important after those kind of intense spiritual experiences, especially something like plant medicine, it's the integration piece. You know, Shaman Durek really emphasizes that.
Oh, yeah, totally. It's not just about having the experience. It's about what you do with it afterwards.
Right, exactly. He's not a fan of what he calls the mundane matrix.
The what?
The mundane matrix. It's basically jumping right back into the daily grind after you've had this profound, potentially life-altering experience.
I can see how that would be kind of jarring.
Totally. It's like going on a deep shamanic journey in the Amazon and then heading straight back to your Wall Street office. It just doesn't compute.
So it's about honoring the process, giving yourself time and space to really let those insights and that wisdom you gained during those ceremonies sink in and become part of your life.
Exactly. It's like expecting to run a marathon without proper training and recovery. You need that integration time to really reap the benefit.
Makes sense. Okay, but what about for those of us who aren't planning on taking ayahuasca or trekking through the Amazon anytime soon? How do we apply this idea of integration to our own lives?
It's about mindfulness, I think, being present in each moment, giving ourselves the space to process our experiences both big and small.
Yeah.
It's about bridging that gap between the spiritual and the material, recognizing that they're interconnected aspects of our being.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, Shaman Durek also talks about the concept of trauma and how it relates to our spiritual well-being, which I found really interesting.
Yeah, he does. From a shamanic perspective, he sees trauma as this kind of repetitive cycle of traveling back to past painful experiences and reliving them
Mm.
in our minds and in our
So it's
bodies.
not just a psychological thing, but also an energetic one.
Exactly. And he really emphasizes how this constant replaying of past hurts can create blockages in our energy field, leading to all sorts of physical and emotional imbalances.
It's like getting stuck in these negative feedback loops.
Yeah. And he also points out that our bodies don't actually differentiate between past, present, and future. So when we relive a traumatic experience, our nervous system reacts as if it's happening right now.
Which explains why certain memories or triggers can bring up such intense emotional and physical reactions.
Right. It can feel so real. And that's where personal power comes in. Shaman Durek encourages us to recognize that we actually have the power to choose how we respond to these triggers to break free from those negative patterns.
So it's about reclaiming our agency, not letting the past control our present or our future.
Absolutely. And this ties back to his belief that negativity often stems from internal struggles rather than external forces. It's about taking responsibility for our own thoughts, feelings, and reactions.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? How do we go from feeling like a victim of our circumstances to becoming these empowered creators of our own reality?
Well, Shaman Durek talks about aligning with our higher selves, our spiritual essence, which he describes as a being of love.
Okay, so it's about recognizing that inherent goodness within us.
Exactly. And by connecting with that love and essence, we can start to see negativity for what it truly is, a projection of fear and pain.
It's like choosing to see the world through a different lens, one that's filtered through love and compassion.
Exactly. Now, this doesn't mean ignoring or denying negativity, though,
Why?
right?
Because that wouldn't be very realistic.
Of course not. It's about acknowledging it, holding space for it, but not letting it define us or control our actions.
Yeah, I remember that powerful example he gave about how he responds to criticism, even when it's hurtful or hateful.
He simply says, I love you. I'm sorry you feel that way, and I'm moving on.
Wow. That's such a profound demonstration of self-awareness and emotional maturity. He's not letting the negativity hook him in.
Exactly. He's choosing to detach and stay centered in his own truth.
That takes some serious inner strength,
It does. It's like he's mastered the art of not taking things personal.
which is easier said than done right.
Definitely. But it's a key aspect of reclaiming our personal power. When we stop taking things personally, we stop giving our power away to external forces. We stop letting other people's opinions and judgments dictate how we feel about ourselves.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So how do we actually cultivate that kind of resilience, that ability to stay grounded when we're faced with so much negativity in the world?
Well, Shaman Durek talks about connecting with our spiritual support system. Our spirit guides our ancestors, the divine. It's about recognizing that we're not alone in this journey.
We've got backup.
Exactly. And he emphasizes the power of prayer meditation ritual as ways to strengthen that connection to the spiritual realm and to receive guidance and support.
It's like tapping into this wellspring of wisdom and strength that's always available to us.
Exactly. And, there's no one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to spiritual practice. It's about finding what works for you, what helps you feel connected and supported.
Okay, I like that. So it's about personalizing it, making it your own.
Absolutely. Now, he also talks about the importance of recognizing our sovereignty.
Our sovereignty.
Yes, it's about recognizing that we are ultimately responsible for our own lives, our own choices, and our own experiences. It's about owning our power, stepping into our full potential as creators of our own reality.
That's a powerful concept. Now, this doesn't mean isolating ourselves or rejecting connection, though, right?
No, not at all. It's actually the opposite. It's about recognizing that true connection comes from a place of wholeness and self-love. It's about showing up in our relationships as our most authentic selves.
This requires setting healthy boundaries, honoring our own needs, and not allowing others to kind of have dominion over us.
Exactly. And he shares this really powerful story about how he challenged his own father, who was very controlling and abusive, by refusing to let him have power over him anymore.
Wow, that's a bold move.
It was. He literally stopped calling him father and started calling him by his first name.
Wow, that's a powerful example of setting boundaries and reclaiming personal power,
Yeah.
even within a family dynamic, which can be really tricky.
It can.
Mhm.
And it's interesting how he connects this concept of sovereignty to how we relate to negativity, too. He says if someone is trying to control you or make you feel bad about yourself, it's because they are not aware of their own sovereignty.
Oh, that's an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
So it's not about judging them, but about recognizing that their behavior is a reflection of their own internal struggles.
Exactly. And by standing firm in our own sovereignty, we can choose not to engage in those power struggles, to rise above the drama.
Which is something he seems to do really well, especially when it comes to dealing with the media. He gives that great example of how he handles negativity from the press, particularly when they try to bait him into saying something negative about the royal family.
Right. He just doesn't play their game. He simply says, I love you. I'm sorry you feel that way, and I'm moving on.
It's such a brilliant strategy. He's
Yeah.
not giving them the satisfaction of a reaction. He's choosing to stay above the fray.
And this ties back to his belief that every experience is an opportunity to choose love, to practice compassion, and to create a more positive reality.
It's like he's saying, we don't have to be victims of our circumstances. We can choose to be victors, creators of our own reality.
Exactly. And this leads us to his perspective on psychic abilities, which I know is something a lot of people are curious about.
Yeah, can anyone learn to be psychic? Are we all born with these abilities?
Shaman Durek believes that these abilities are inherent in all of us. It's just a matter of learning how to access them.
So how do we do that? How do we tap into our own psychic potential?
His advice is refreshingly simple. Become more playful and childlike. Reconnect with the magic of the world around us.
Wait, didn't we talk about this earlier?
We did. It's about rediscovering that sense of wonder that we had as kids,
Right.
that ability to see the world with fresh eyes, to believe in the impossible.
So it's about approaching spirituality with a sense of curiosity and playfulness, not taking ourselves too seriously.
Exactly. And he actually suggests some specific exercises to help us tap into those subtle energies. Do you remember any of them?
Yeah, a few. Like picturing a table with flowers and seeing if the scene changes or if someone walks in. That's trippy.
It is kind of like a meditation, but for your intuition, right? There was also that one where you try to feel an object across the room with your spirit hand, then you compare it to how it feels when you actually touch it.
Yeah. It's like a game, but it's also helping you become more sensitive to energy, right?
Yeah.
Oh, and then trying to hear distant sounds, like a baby crying or a train conductor's voice while someone's talking to you.
Exactly. It's all about expanding your awareness and really tuning in to things you might normally miss. He even suggests looking at a tree and seeing if an animal appears. Kind of like inviting the spirit world to play along.
I love that he makes it sound so playful. It's like
Yes.
approaching spirituality with a sense of wonder and curiosity, like a kid exploring a new world.
It takes the seriousness out of it, right? It lets you have fun, experiment, and find that magic that's always been there.
Speaking of playfulness, Shaman Durek himself just radiates this joy and childlike enthusiasm. He's gone through so much, physical pain, public scrutiny, you name it. Yet he still finds delight in the simplest things.
It's true. He talks about singing to birds, playing with action figures, filling up his sticker book. It's like he's never lost touch with his inner child, that sense of wonder and playfulness we often lose as adults.
It's a good reminder that we don't have to be so serious all the time. It's okay to let loose, have fun, and embrace the things that bring us joy, no matter how silly they may seem.
Couldn't agree more. I think that's at the heart of his message. It's not just about spiritual practices or knowledge. It's about living a life that's full of joy, creativity, and a deep connection to everything around us.
And that's something we can all learn from, regardless of our beliefs or backgrounds.
Absolutely. It's about remembering who we truly are. These divine beings, sparks of light, capable of incredible things. It's about tapping into that infinite potential that lies within each of us.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Shaman Durek's world, what's the big takeaway for our listeners? What should they walk away with?
It's about choice. We can choose to live in fear, negativity, and limitations. Or we can choose love, joy, and our own power.
We can be victims of our circumstances, or we can be victors, creators of our own reality.
Powerful stuff, right?
It really is. It's about recognizing that we have the power to shape our experiences, heal our wounds, and create a life that truly aligns with our purpose.
And it all starts with that childlike sense of wonder, that openness to possibility, that willingness to play and explore the magic of the world.
So here's a final thought for our listeners. What childlike activity will you bring back into your life? What'll help you tap into your own inner magic?
That's a great question. Maybe it's playing with your pet, coloring, dancing to your favorite music.
Or trying a new hobby, exploring a new place, or saying yes to something that scares you.
Whatever sparks that joy, that aliveness, that reminds you of who you truly are.
That's it for our deep dive into the fascinating world of Shaman Durek. We hope you enjoyed the journey as much as we did.
Keep exploring these ideas, dig deeper, and discover your own unique path to spiritual growth and empowerment.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive. Be sure to check back daily for a new episode. And if you're looking for more, head over to www.ultimatemasters.org. Coaching